Okay, we're going to look at some new skills now. So we're going to working with misleading graphs. So the size and scale of your graph can influence the way you interpret the data. You can change the scale on the axis or change the starting point on the axis, and it can change how the graph looks by looking at it. You can actually influence the person's perception of the data. So of course, when people are doing graphs for presentations in business, they really want to consider their audience, what are they trying to convey, and they will use the graph accordingly. So it's important to be able to take a look at the graph and say, hey, wait a minute, what if you graphed it like this? Would it look the same? So let's take a look at this. So here we have the approximate cost of sheet metal per ton over a period of time. So here's our title, cost of sheet metal by year. We've labeled, here's the cost per ton. Here's the month on the bottom. M is our variable for the horizontal axis. C is our variable for our vertical axis. Then we're going up by month, starting in, well, every 6 months. So we got January of 2005, July of 2005, January 2006, etc. And oh, look here. So this is what I talked about in a previous example. This little line here, right here, this means that there's a break in the graph. So they've skipped from 0 to 500. And then they're going up, well, here's 550, here's 600, here's 650, here's 700. So the $0 to $500 is just gone from the graph. Probably just to zoom in on this and maybe make things look a little different. So what does it appear has happened to the price of sheet metal over time? Well, it's pretty much going up and down. So there's a lot of fluctuation. There seems to be a great deal of fluctuation. So price jumping up and down. What are the scale and starting points of the vertical axis? Well, we start at 500. I mean, here's 0 down here, but really we're starting at 500. It starts at 500. Whoops. So starts at $500 and then increases by, well, it's by $50 each time. So if we redraw the graph starting at the vertical axis at 0, I'm not quite sure where that came from. Let's delete that little puppy there. There we go. And use the same scale. And we're going to, what does this new graph show about fluctuation? The fluctuation prices. Well, we could draw the whole thing. Cost of sheet metal by year, cost per ton, month. And instead of this, just a second, go back to my pen. Instead of this starting here, it's going to go way down. I'm not going to draw it on here. We have an example right here. So if we look at that, let's just zoom in on it a little bit. So here we've got the cost of sheet metal by year, exact same graph, but now look, here's this all this space underneath. So that's the 0 to 500, and now they've actually changed the scale as well in this. But if you look, well, the fluctuation doesn't look as great now as it did before because we've got all the space under here. Well, it's you know, between 500 and 750. So when we have it this way, it looks like, well, it's still changing, but the increases and decreases don't look as large. So when the vertical axis starts at 0, the fluctuations in price don't seem to be as significant.